America. And here's where a good chunk of her is missing. Do love me a good scenic view. And this is quite a view. Lavender Pit. Just here in Bisbee, Arizona. Another old mining town, just about 30 minutes drive south of Tombstone, so not too far of a drive from where I just came from. But unlike Tombstone, Bisbee profited from what we now know as pit mining. Layer upon layer of earth are washed away by high-pressure water, and we're left with something that looks just like this. Kind of scenic in its own way. You can see each individual layer that they worked down into the pit. Uncover those precious minerals. Here it was copper. That's the big thing here in Bisbee. Copper. Gonna check out some old haunted locations here in town, maybe a little bit of history, and see what's what here in Bisbee. Man, what a bizarre avenue. Definite hippie kind of vibe here in Bisbee. That's kind of cool. Don't get that out of mining towns too often. Here is the first historic site of the day, the Copper Queen Hotel. This was built back in 1902 and actually holds Arizona's title as the longest continually operating hotel in the state. It has never closed its doors. What's it been now, 120 years?
I told him just to come back, and I told Margaret.
As well, see what's going on the inside. Man, a lot of famous people have walked through these doors in the past. They mention on their website John Wayne was a regular guest of here, Michelle Pfeiffer, Nancy Reagan, a bunch of well-knowns. I don't see anything explicitly saying not to go up here, so what the heck. I will say, in regards to these hallways, definitely a bit of a creep factor. A bit of a shining vibe. Ooh, that's a nice touch. Now, this building is one of many reportedly haunted locations here in the town of Bisbee. And I will say the building itself certainly possesses that creep factor. Yeah. It's going down. Got these charming little sewer lids here in the street. That's a nice touch. I got another old building here. A church of some kind built in 1900. Pretty darn old. Just love how they build these old mining towns just directly into hillsides. Like they had to be near where they were mining stuff, and that was really the only factor. But yeah, it kind of reminds me of like Jerome, Arizona, Virginia City, Nevada, similar towns where each street is like a whole level up or down, depending from the street before it. So most of these little alleyways and little nooks and crannies have stairs into them. Some nice colorful street art slash potential vandalism. A little of both. Yeah, not the worst way to present an abandoned building. (1902). Man, just everything here is so freaking old. Just like original. What the? Whoa. That's good advice. On every single step. Oh, wow. They're cool. Just on the side of a random building. And even the power lines just have colorful, artistic touches. No shortage of it. There is a pretty famous mine here, the Queen Mine, that they do tours of, as you can see there. They give you a hard hat and a light and set you on your way. I'm not sure if it's that, maybe right there, or it could be... I doubt they have you go all the way up there, but what is that? Doesn't look natural. Probably this guy. Let's see, this is Queen 1915. Okay. Alright, did a little exploring, kind of just a preliminary investigation. I did book a ticket though. Doing a tour tonight, so we're gonna check out Bisbee in depth with somebody who, you know, ideally knows the history and knows what they're talking about. So you guys are gonna come along with me. Let's do it. Alrighty. On our way down to the walking tour. I get a proper look into Bisbee and some of the history. It is cold out tonight. Oh my good God, I've got 2 jackets on. I'm a little worried about it, but I think we'll be alright.
Tombstone, the town too tough to die. And they say Bisbee is the town too high to care. Talking about the elevation, of course. So, as we cross the streets of Bisbee, make sure you look left, look right, and because some of the drivers are a little high on elevation, look left again. But what they did find was that the soil was very rich in minerals. They found things like copper, chrysocolla, which are what these big stones are up here, malachite, turquoise, quartz, amethyst, among many other minerals. So a wealthy investor by the name of Judge Bisbee decided to put out the money to develop this into a mining town. And although they named the town after him, Judge Bisbee never actually stepped foot in town. I think we should change the name. Now there are several reasons why we believe there's so much paranormal activity here in town. The first one is the mines. A lot of miners died untimely deaths. The second, it was the Wild West back then. So our population today, which includes Old Bisbee and all the outlying newer housing developments, is about 6,000 people. In its heyday, Bisbee was one of the biggest cities between St. Louis and San Francisco, with a population between 20,000 and 35,000 people. So there were a lot of people in a small area and not a lot of law enforcement. So the miners would get off work, they'd come down here to Brewery Gulch, where there were over 100 bars and brothels. They'd start drinking and gambling, and if they suspected somebody was cheating at a game of cards, they would just shoot them, and there would be no justice for that death. The last reason is there's a huge deposit of crystal quartz under the ground here, which is said to amplify spiritual and paranormal things. And that flooding brought in a lot of flies. And those flies ended up causing a typhoid epidemic. So the people of Bisbee were dying off from typhoid, and the mayor was worried about it. So he decided to have a competition in town. Whoever could bring in the most dead flies would win a $10 cash prize.
Wow.
Which was a lot more back then. So one of the citizens of Bisbee brought in about 10,000 flies and won that cash prize. So one of our local artists today made those in memory of that story. If you look across the street at the building with the white pillars, today it's the Miners and Merchants Antique Center. But in the mining days, it was the biggest bank in town. It's also the site of our first ghost story. Now in the 70s, the mines dried up, so most of the people of Bisbee left town. Well, eventually, a bunch of artists and hippies moved in and set up their businesses in these old buildings. One man in particular, named Mr. Brown, decided to make his business in the old bank building. So Mr. Brown thought it would be cool to put his office down in the basement in that vault. Well, one night, he had closed up for the night. He's down in his office going through his paperwork, when all of a sudden he heard glass breaking, things being dragged across the floor. So he runs upstairs to see what's going on, and what do you think he found? Nothing. So he goes back downstairs, he starts going through his paperwork again, and again he hears glass breaking, things being dragged across the floor. So he runs back upstairs, and still, nobody's up there, nothing is broken. Well, this starts happening night after night after night, and eventually he just gets sick of it, packs up his business, and moves it into a building up the street. But does this get rid of the spirits? To be continued. Is the Bisbee Grand Hotel. The Bisbee Grand is the only hotel in town known for its guests running out in the middle of the night wearing nothing but their underwear because they're so afraid of the paranormal activity inside.
Badass.
There are 3 main hauntings to the hotel. The first one they call the Lady Ghost. Now, years ago, there were fires that came down Main Street that burned down parts of these buildings. So after that, the Bisbee Grand had to temporarily close to guests and rebuild. Well, during that time, there was a construction worker inside one day doing his job when he saw a woman walking around on the stairs in what looked to be Victorian-era clothing. So he went to walk up to her to tell her it wasn't safe to be in the building, and as he walked up to her, she disappeared through one of the walls. Now, since then, several guests in the hotel have reported seeing the same woman, but the owners of the hotel won't tell you exactly what she looks like. They want anybody that thinks they see her to come to them with the description so they know it's an accurate sighting. The second one they call Jeremiah. Now, when they rebuilt, they added in the saloon, and they actually have a bar top from the old Pony Saloon in Tombstone. So after that, people started seeing this Jeremiah around. They say he looks like a miner. He's often spotted by the women's bathroom. He's a bit of a creep.
Cool.
One employee saw him walk from the bar and disappear through the fireplace. Another employee was cleaning the women's bathroom by herself one night, when all of a sudden, all the lights shut off. Which is weird because in order to do that, you would have to go through 2 locked doors and flip a circuit breaker. So she was done cleaning the bathroom for the night and went over to the bar to start polishing glasses. As she's at the bar polishing glasses, she felt someone come up behind her and start massaging her back. She actually considered that a work perk and still works there today. There have been a lot of reports in the women's bathroom of the doors rattling on their own. I had a guest who said she'd used the bathroom that day. She stepped out of the stall, and before she even turned to wash her hands, the sink turned on by itself. And it's not an automatic sink. The last one is upstairs in the Oriental Suite. In the Oriental Suite, they have a traditional Chinese wedding bed that was given to the bride and groom on their wedding night. And rumor has it, the bride passed away shortly after the wedding. So the groom couldn't bear to have it anymore, so he put it up for auction, where the Bisbee Grand bought it and put it in their Oriental Suite. Since then, guests who have stayed in the suite reported walking in, stepping into the bathroom for a minute, and when they came back into the room, all of the furniture was piled up on top of the bed. Other guests who have stayed in the suite reported all the blankets being pulled off in the middle of the night. Now, all the activity in the room seems to be centered around that bed, so they think it's the spirit of the wife and she doesn't like people messing with it. Anybody staying there tonight?
Nice.
We're in the Victorians.
Nice.
Oh,
That
yeah.
one's pretty haunted too.
Oh my God.
Good luck. Well, when he packed up and moved, he came into this building behind me. And he put his office in the back room. So again, one night, he had closed for the night. He's back in his office going through his paperwork. What he heard was sounded like kids playing out here on these steps.
That's creepy.
So he came out here to tell them to leave, and what do you think he saw? Nothing again. So he decided to look into the history of the building, and he found out this used to be the Mitchell family mortuary. And his office in the back room was the embalming room.
Oof.
So he decided he had had enough of Bisbee, its history and its spirits. He packed up his business and moved to Vegas to find some different kinds of spirits. Next, an artist named Barbara moved in. Now, Barbara had closed one night, and she was driving back past to look at one of her window displays when she saw a little girl sitting out here on these steps. So she slowed down, went to roll her window down to make sure the little girl was okay, and as she's rolling down her window, the little girl stood up and disappeared through these doors. So she looked further into the Mitchell family mortuary, and she found out that there used to be a second story to this building that was an apartment where the Mitchell family lived. And when those fires came down Main Street, they burned down that second story apartment, killing their 3-year-old daughter, Jean Diane. So she's pretty sure that was the little girl she saw.
Damn.
Well, Barbara eventually left for one reason or another, and another artist named Aviva moved in. Now, Aviva was really into paranormal things, so she contacted my boss, Renee, and asked her about the history of the building and the activity inside. So Renee told her about the Mitchell family and about Jean Diane, and that it was said that Jean Diane always used to play with a small bouncy ball. And if you look right here at the little chair with the creepy dolls, there's a couple little balls. They've decided to try it out, and we're waiting to hear reports. And if you are interested, my boss did write 2 books about the paranormal that are for sale in here near the front door in the pink coffin. But it is one of the most photographed spots in Bisbee. The owners of this home commissioned a local artist after 9/11 to make these statues. They're 2 angels. The one on the left is looking down over the souls of those who survived, and the one on the right is looking up to the souls of those who passed away. It's arguably one of the most haunted houses in the country. There were at least 26 deaths in the house. One of the first ones was a miner named Nat Anderson. Now, Nat lived in one of the rooms upstairs. It used to be a boarding house. Well, he got off work one night, and he was walking up the stairs to his room when the people in the house heard him yell, "You son of a bitch," and they heard 3 gunshots. They found Nat Anderson dead with gunshot wounds to the head, and the police did an investigation and never found out who killed him. Today it is a bed and breakfast, and they believe Nat is one of the main spirits that guests encounter. In the 1920s, a sheriff's deputy was living in one of the rooms with his wife. Well, he went out of town on business and ended up coming home early one night. When he came home and went into the room he shared with his wife, he found her in bed with another man. He was so enraged by that he shot her, shot the man she was with, shot every person he could find on his way out of the house, and then shot himself.
Wow.
That accounted for 13 deaths in one night.
Oh, yeah, that's... Focus. Oh, yeah, that's intense. That would freak me out.
So this building here today is the Central School Project, which houses studios for artists. But in the mining days, this front part was a bell tower. Now, they always had a lookout up there because they were afraid the Apache would come in and raid the town. They also had a law back then that only Apache women and children were allowed to come into town to buy goods. So, of course, the men didn't feel comfortable sending their wives and kids in without them. So they would actually dress up like women and come into town to protect their families. Bisbee's first cross-dressers. And every October we have a marathon, the 1,000 Stair Climb. For some, it's scarier than this tour. Can anybody guess what this used to be?
Hangings, that's what I was thinking.
A cemetery. What? Yes, this used to be a cemetery.
And now kids can play.
A long time ago, in the early 1900s, when this was still a cemetery, during one of the monsoon seasons, there was flooding in here. So that water mixing with the graves caused a problem for the water supply in town. So they had to come in and dig up as many graves as they could find and move them down to Evergreen Cemetery where they are today. Now back then there were a lot of unmarked graves, so we know there's still some remains under the ground here.
Ooh.
And they decided to build a park over it for whatever reason.
Fun.
Irony.
And about 14 years ago, one of our locals was in the park one night with his young daughter. They were the only ones in the park that night, and she came running over these stairs and started running up and down, laughing and playing. And it looked like she was talking to and playing with other kids. So her dad asked her what she was doing. She's like, oh, I'm just playing with my friends. He didn't think anything of it at the time. You know, sometimes kids have imaginary friends. So she goes over to the jungle gym and starts playing over there. But she kept looking back to the stairs and laughing and waving. So he looked over, and still, they're the only ones in the park. Well, when he looked back to his daughter, she had a sad look on her face. He's like, honey, what's wrong? She said, I was waving to my friends, and when he looked at them, they got scared and disappeared into the wall. Now, that girl who still lives here in town today and is grown up now, swears that night in the park there were other kids here playing with her. We're behind the trash.
Which was the one taken on your tour?
Yeah.
This one.
What do we see?
Oh my God, there's like a big mist.
Yeah.
Creepy.
During Prohibition, they went from being a bar to being an ice cream shop. And they have tunnels underground, so people know to order certain flavors and they would get alcohol. So this building behind me is the Bisbee Inn, also known as the Hotel Lamore. Now back in the 80s, there were two young boys down on Main Street at the Lyric Theater watching a movie one night. It was monsoon season and they lived in one of these houses up here. So when they got out of the movie, it was dark out and it was pouring rain. So they came running up these stairs to get home. When they got to the top of the stairs, they saw a woman step out of this wall and put her hand up. So they got scared and ran back down the stairs. As they ran back down the stairs, this whole retaining wall here collapsed into the alley. So one of those boys who still lives here in town today says whatever spirit that was saved their lives. Now since then, several guests in the hotel have reported seeing the same woman. They call her the Lady in White. They say she has long hair and a flowing white dress, and people tend to smell lavender when she's around. Now I'm going to take you around to the front of the hotel. I'll tell you about a couple more spirits inside, and then I can actually take you in to look around a little bit. Another spirit that guests tend to encounter, they call the Cuddler Ghosts. Big spoon.
Big spoon.
They say he doesn't care if you're a man or a woman. Guests have reported what feels like someone climbing into their bed at night and cuddling up behind them. I actually had a guest on a tour around the time we were in the park. She was asking if I knew if the Airbnb right behind here was haunted, because the night before she had woken up 3 times to what felt like someone climbing into her bed and laying up close behind her. So we think the Cuddler Ghost goes back there too.
Called Archive 81.
Back in the day, Harry Houdini actually performed here. Today it's Bisbee Realty in the front, but in the back, the theater part is still back there. Last I heard it was for sale, so hopefully someone will buy it and turn it back into a theater at some point. But people would feel cold spots, see shadow figures. There was an employee who mysteriously fell off a balcony and died at some point. But the theater part closed in the 80s. The last showing was Return of the Jedi.
Sweet. It's a good way to go out.
The Evergreen Hotel. Back in the day, anyone came to stay here. A lot of rich people, many celebrities through the years. Harry Houdini, Theodore Roosevelt, John Wayne through Lee Marvin through the saloon windows. Julia Roberts, Michelle Pfeiffer, Johnny Depp, who was 86 from the bar here. It's also home to at least 27 different spirits. There are 3 main ones that guests tend to see. The first one they call the Smoking Man. Now guests have reported seeing this man walking around upstairs. They think he might have been the manager of the hotel back in the mining days. He's always seen with a cigar in his mouth. Other guests have reported just seeing or smelling smoke. year on the 4th floor with his mom, who was a housekeeper. Well, unfortunately, Billy ended up drowning in the San Pedro River not far from here. Now, guests today can stay in Billy's room, and guests who have stayed in his room reported that if you have anything small and shiny laying around, it'll get moved around the room and hit him. He won't tinker things, but he likes to play. The last one is Miss Julia Lowell. Julia was a lady of the evening. She was a prostitute. Her room is upstairs in 315. Next to her room is a door leading to an outside staircase, so her clients can come in and out the back without being seen by the public. Well, Julia ended up falling madly in love with one of her clients, who was a wealthy business owner in town. She was so in love with this man that she decided to profess her love to him in front of the whole town. When she did that, of course, he scorned her. So Julia was heartbroken. She fell into a deep depression and started drinking heavily. And eventually, she ended up hanging herself from the stairs outside of her room. Now, guests today, especially male guests and especially male guests who were taken, have reported seeing a woman walking around on the 3rd floor, wearing nothing but lingerie, holding a bottle, sometimes doing a seductive dance. Other guests have reported hearing a woman whispering into their ears at night, or pulling the sheets up off their feet. Now, when my parents came to visit about 2 years ago, we were looking around on the 3rd floor, and me, my mom, and sister have always seen and felt spirits, but my dad never has. And they didn't know about Julia or any of the other spirits. And we ended up going out the door next to Julia's room, and my dad swears a woman was following us out. But that does conclude the tour. If you guys enjoyed the tour, please write me a review on TripAdvisor. If you had a good time on the tour, my name is Dani, and I was your ghost host for the evening. If you did not enjoy the tour, my name is Susan. Before you leave, I do have this spittoon up here where miners used to spit their tobacco into. We have washed it thoroughly though, and we use it for tips. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you enjoyed the tour.
Ah man, what a fun tour. Exactly the spot you would want the tour to end. I kind of figured they would end on like a good one, and sure enough, this is the place that Ghost Adventures went to, so naturally they would end the tour on like the big thing. But man, so many people had crazy stories happen to them in this building right here. Like, I gotta stay there. That was the end of the tour. Hope you enjoyed some of my footage from Bisbee and the surrounding areas. Did Tombstone as well in a previous video if you want to go back and check that out. Very fun. If you're ever down here in southern Arizona, highly recommend coming through Bisbee, enjoying some of their creepy, dark-ass history. Very cool. Have a good night.